Welcome back. Now back to our main story about the Zambian elections. We'll definitely be in conversation with Dr. Lee Habasonda, a political analyst, in just a moment as soon as we have him on the line. All right, I'm getting an indication that Dr. Lee Habasonda is now back with us. A very good evening to you, Mr. Habasonda. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening indeed. So what's likely to happen tomorrow before 5 a.m.? Because that's the cut-off time for the counting of the votes.
Well, I do think that the Electoral Commission of Zambia has been promising to keep its commitment to announce and declare a winner within 72 hours. And the country is actually anxiously waiting to have the process done before the 72 hours is over. So everybody is anxious. We have... Yes, please.
Well, there's concerns that President Lungu might not accept anything other than victory. So with that in mind, what's likely to happen?
Well, quite frankly, I mean, looking at the votes against his main opponent, we are yet to see where he gets the confidence that he is going to win this election. My own view of the situation is that, in fact, the opposition have upset the ruling party in these elections because they have scored many votes in what has been considered as the ruling party's strongholds. And therefore, looking at the margins and having 28 constituencies remaining, it is quite a tall order that the ruling party will upset the status quo. In fact, I do think that Zambia's tradition has been that presidents do not resist to give up power, but because military for the first time was deployed to manage these elections, I hope they will not turn against the people to keep Mr. Lungu in office if he does not want to leave. But I believe that by 05 hours, we will really have known who has taken the election. But clearly, from the figures that are coming out, it is quite a tall order for the status quo to change.
Yeah, as you say, it's quite a tall order for the status quo to change. But we've seen, over the past few decades, in some African states, that when the incumbent president, does not accept defeat, then it often leads to bloodshed. So should Zambians in this particular instance brace themselves for more blood on the floor?
I don't think that Zambians would allow such a situation, including our own military. I think they are very professional military. They have interests of the majority of the people, and they will, in this instance, I believe, protect democracy and the better good of the many Zambians. Clearly, I think that while the ruling party was anticipating a victory, the victory of the opposition is rather surprising to them and to many people who have been observing the political process in Zambia. In fact, it is strange that the ruling party has to complain about the election being not free and fair because they have not allowed members of the opposition to address meetings. They have used the Zambia police to disrupt their meetings or not to allow them to campaign. So it's quite strange that the ruling party would be the ones crying about their agents not being able to access polling stations and talking about the electoral process not being free and fair. The media, which is the state media, has rarely covered the opposition, and what we see now is the power of social media and technology, which helped the opposition to reach out and get the sort of numbers that we have seen. And so it's no longer about geography, it is much more about demographics, using technology that is at play in this election. So I do not see President Lungu refusing to step down. I think that Zambia's tradition of democracy has been that he has to step down. If he intends to stay on, certainly he will alienate himself from the population, and probably for a long time, then people may begin to resort to the streets to actually protect their democracy.
And the EU observers in particular said campaign conditions had been unequal, and they actually favored the incumbent. So I suppose then we need to interrogate the role of observers in this particular instance and its influence in the determination of an election outcome. To what extent should these observers be allowed to weigh in, and at what stage should their input be considered?
Well, Zambia is a part of the international community. And so observers, whether local or international, in this case observers are international ones, I think they have a say in the electoral process because they come from countries that provide technical and financial support to the country, and therefore when they actually come in to observe the election, their input is valuable because it helps to improve the state of democracy in the country. So, yes, they must not meddle in internal affairs, but because Zambia is part of the international community, it has committed itself to certain standards, including democratic and human rights standards. And the observers have the right to point out when these human rights or democratic tenets have been violated. And so they are right in order to be able to point out. However, we believe that they must not just end at pointing out the wrong, they must also engage the sitting government to ensure that stability continues in the country where after they have left and made their pronouncements about the credibility of the elections.
Dr. Habasonda, a political scientist at the University of Zambia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, vote counting is still well in progress in Zambia, and a final announcement will be made shortly before 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. This is The Globe on SABC News.